Great. Well, we'll get started now because I know everyone's pretty busy. Welcome to our second virtual Inspiring Women in Technology event. And thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. I'm Sarah Wyman and I'm a Senior Associate at Mills & Reeve. I'm usually based in our Manchester office, but have been working in my virtual office for the last year or so, like many others. I'm in the commercial IP and IT team at Mills & Reeve. And I just want to give you a little bit of background for those who haven't attended our events before. We sort of set up the event really, we started as a physical event for sort of networking, but really it was to kind of bring people together in the tech sector, and also kind of just as a forum for kind of sharing ideas, support, and also listening to inspiring speakers and their journey into tech. So just a couple of housekeeping rules just before we start today. The session is being recorded, and if you've got any questions, if you add them into the chat function or the Q&A, so the Q&A is just an anonymous section for asking questions, or the chat kind of asks the questions to all of us. We can't see you today, but you can see us as we're on a webinar. We'd recommend probably putting your settings on speaker view rather than gallery mode, so you can see the speakers individually. And at the end of the session, you'll get an email with some feedback. So we'd be grateful if you can answer those feedback questions today, including whether you're interested in returning to physical events. We'll see what happens over the next couple of months with that. And just finally, we have got a LinkedIn group that we set up after the last event. So if you'd like to join that, please add me on LinkedIn and I can add you to that. So I'll now pass you over to Thea from Code Nation to introduce our speakers.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So just a little bit of background on me. So I'm one of the engagement directors at Code Nation. So we're a coding school and we believe anyone can code. So we train developers with a 12-week boot camp. Me and Sarah are really passionate about getting more women into tech, hence the reason for setting up this event, and we absolutely love doing it. So we've got some great speakers for you here today. So I'm going to hand over to Susan Kabani. So she is the CEO and founder of Eugenie. Eugenie is a digital platform that puts together a tailored solution for clients to engage with their online communities and their members. She's had a great journey and has got a lot to talk about, so I'm going to hand over to Susan. Thanks, Susan.
I made the biggest mistake that we all make right now is start talking while I'm still on mute. That definitely wouldn't happen in the real world, right? I wouldn't just like start talking and you can't hear me. But thank you guys so much for having me here today. Sarah, Thea, and the whole team. I think these series of events are fantastic, and I really like the theme today. I am a non-technical founder, and I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about me, my journey. Building Eugenie, well, not building it because I'm definitely not technical, but building Eugenie as a non-technical founder and some of the lessons that I've learned through that experience. So I'm going to go ahead and share some slides with you guys as well to kind of walk you through that. Again, nothing super complicated. I'm a big believer in using, the right tech to do the right things, and I've actually used Canva to build my presentation. So let me go ahead and share that with you guys. You might probably see those slides, and then I'll jump right in. So as I've mentioned, and also Thea mentioned, my name is Susan Kabani, and I'm the founder and CEO of Eugenie. Eugenie is an off-the-shelf SaaS solution for any business that wants to gather their customer community, their membership, or even a social network off of social media. We started Eugenie, the origins of Eugenie, as what I'll talk to you about in a minute, is started from a very first world problem that me and my husband, who's my co-founder of Eugenie, has. We wanted to solve a problem for ourselves, and even though we weren't technical, we thought, actually, as non-technical people with a problem, we may be the best people to do it, because at the end of the day, most of the people who use Eugenie are non-technical. So let me tell you a little bit about my journey before Eugenie, so you can kind of get a sense of, what took me to Eugenie and my background. As you can probably tell, I'm an American, born and raised in Chicago, moved around a little bit, lived in New York and New Orleans before moving to London about 10 years ago. My background is I'm a social policy and psychology major at Northwestern University, and then I went to law school, got a background in intellectual property law, but decided I was going to work within sports, and ended up working for the NFL here in the UK, which is what first brought me here. I wanted to represent leagues or athletes, and although, you know, I'm not a professional athlete myself by any means, but I really do love sports, and I thought at least representing, being part of the sporting world that way, that was my kind of indoor. Whilst I was here, I actually got the opportunity to work for a global laser manufacturing. So I got an offer. And a lot of people ask me the question, why would I move here from the States? It's always the other way around generally, right? You're like, oh, why would you ever come here? For me, it was an amazing opportunity to actually move to Europe. So when I tell my friends now that I can pop to Paris for the weekend, well, not during lockdown, obviously, but they get super jealous. So, you know, it was great for me to be able to move to London. I have a lot of family and community ties here as well, actually. So there was just a lot of reasons why, personally and professionally, I made the big move. While I was working for the laser manufacturing firm, and again, a very non-technical person working in a very technical company, a very different type of tech though. We were actually building and manufacturing lasers for skin and hair removal, so like beauty treatments for salons. If I went into the warehouse, I wouldn't know anything about how anything worked there either, but I actually ended up taking over operations and sales, and was the operational director by the time I left that company. In 2016, I decided to move on from that for a variety of different reasons, again, both personal and professional. And I had just gotten married at the time to my lovely husband. And he said to me, well, what do you want to do next, right? You want to leave this job, which is great, but personally draining on you. And, you know, there was a lot of reasons why it was a toxic environment for me. So I started thinking about what was my next step. You know, I'm a lawyer, so I could obviously go and try to get my bar certification here. I'm an American lawyer, so I'd have to do some education and training here. My other specialty was ADR, so should I do something like that? So the whole idea was, should I do something that I already know how to do? My husband and I used to fight about, and this is where the first world problem that we were trying to solve comes into play. We got married, and being the CEO of my marriage, I said to him, I need you to take care of these 3 tasks. I need you to, you know, take out the rubbish. I need you to get the groceries, and I need you to drop off the dry cleaning. And of course, week upon week, he's like, babe, where's my suit? Oh, I need this for work. Like the dry cleaning just never got picked up or dropped off. I saw a neighbor walking home with their dry cleaning, and I thought, I wonder if we could build an app that would allow community members to share tasks, to share time, and ultimately resources. So we both, Wyman and I, come from a very strong social and religious community. It's how we met. And that's why when I moved to the UK, it was quite easy for me. I just kind of plopped into the community and made a lot of friends that way. But we also do quite a lot of sharing of time and carpooling and resources. And so we thought maybe we could build a better system to do that. You know, there's lots of WhatsApp groups where you can say, oh, does anybody want this? Or a Facebook group where you might match with the right person at the right time. These systems are not really designed to do what we wanted to do, which was very efficient sharing of tasks and time. So we decided that we, 2 non-technical founders, were going to build an app. And, you know, again, being non-technical, we knew what the problem was. We just then needed to find the talent. So I've actually started, I'm going to skip over to a couple of my, whoops, what have I just done? I'm going to stop my share actually for you guys for a few minutes. So we decided that we were going to go and build Eugenie. And the big thing that we needed to build Eugenie was actually the developers, right? Because at the end of the day, it was going to be an app-based system. Because we know that consumers like to be on their phones, and this kind of thing we thought would be easier in an app using push notifications. It matches you with the right people rather than something on the web. We looked into London and tried to find the tech talent, and ended up talking to a couple of companies who would help us build a prototype of the tech. We decided on using a company called Eman Labs. And the reason we chose them to help us build the first prototype of Eugenie was, it's not just that they needed to develop the app. One of the first things we learned was that the whole business model behind building a tech company is different than a business model for a traditional standard company. And I'll talk to you guys in a little bit more detail about that in terms of, you know, if I compare my experience of working at the laser manufacturing, and we wanted to build a laser, we could understand that the parts cost X and we need to sell it for Y, and there's our profit. Whereas with the tech company, when you're building something like a SaaS solution, it's not always cut or dry in terms of, this is how much the tech costs. I mean, our tech has cost us 6 figures, right, to build it to date. That's not, I can't charge my customer, 5 figures just to cover that cost. It's a marginal cost. The whole idea is to build a low cost solution that most brands can afford. So I'll start talking to you a little bit about that. But we picked this company based on the fact that they had that technical experience. The developers could build us the tech, but they also had a lot of background helping founders start through the ideation and building a prototype and kind of understanding what a business model that supports your tech would be as well. And as people who had never had tech experience or building a tech company in that way, we decided to bring in the right talent to help us do that. So I'm going to also now talk you through the journey of building the prototype and how we got from this task sharing app to Eugenie today, which is akin to actually having your own LinkedIn for a network. So we have a lot of membership associations. We've got a lot of white label clients now who don't want to build their own app, don't want to leave their communities on LinkedIn, Facebook, WhatsApp, Slack, but are not super technical and don't have huge budgets. So they use our solution as that kind of off the shelf, whether it's like a very off the shelf, Eugenie branded, or all the way to be branded for them. So it's a very different proposition. And I'm going to walk you through how we actually got there and what lessons I learned as that non-technical founder. So if we talk about building the prototype, we sat with this company who we said, okay, this is the problem that we have. This is the problem that we're trying to solve. And they helped us with everything from, the user journey, which I didn't even know what a user journey was when I first started this. And what a user journey is when you're building a piece of tech, you need to think about what does your end user or the person that you want to use the app have to do to use your app. So for us, it was, okay, they have a task they want to share. They've discovered us for some reason. They're going to download an app. Do they have to register? Do we need their information? What do they have to do to share their tasks? So those are the types of things that are involved with building a user journey. And we decided we worked with them to do that. Even the logo behind me, they helped us build. So that was all about just, getting that brand out there as well as much as the tech. The tech is super important, but one of the lessons I've definitely learned is that the sales and marketing side of the business, which we didn't always focus on, we were like, oh, we need to build this app and make it perfect before we launch it. A little bit, we kind of should have done it more of a 50-50 thing. And if anybody has questions on that in terms of product market fit or anything like that, I'm happy to answer them. Bringing the right team as early as possible includes someone that speaks tech. And what I learned is I would say something to my team to say, look, I want this to do, I want this button to do this, or I want the app to, have a platform, all these tasks that they can, people can look through. Well, when you tell that to a developer, they actually think about things in a very, very different way than I actually meant it. And I don't know how much, I think we went back and it's really difficult to kind of put a cost on this mistake, but there is a cost on this mistake because all of a sudden they deliver something for you that is completely not what you wanted, and then they have to rebuild it. And so one of the pieces that we got, advice that we got, and actually I think the feedback we got from our very early people that we wanted to invest in Eugenie was also that you need a CTO or you need someone who speaks tech. Now, I think we've been able to actually do really, really well with our model in terms of having a non-technical founder, but it definitely would have helped us along the way if one of our early team members or one of the people that was on the founding team did speak a bit of tech and could understand those things. So I think we would have saved a bit of time and a bit of definitely would have saved a bit of money. This is what Eugenie looked like in its earliest vision, and I'll show you what it looks like today, just so you kind of get a sense. This was our prototype. So we actually never built the back end of this, and that was the other kind of lesson that we learned is we didn't need to build the entire bells and whistles app to understand whether this business was going to be successful. So they built us these screens, and again, it's very much you have your task, you have the person that might be doing your task, how you actually look for a task sharing. So this was just definitely vision one. What we did before we even built the back end, which is the kind of what makes the app work, these buttons, when we were showing it to people, didn't actually do anything. But what it allowed us to do was talk to people and say, what types of tasks would you share and who would you share with? That kind of product market fit research was really, really important for us to do. And we did that by not building a bells and, back end, we just did the prototype. And that for me was really important because what I got to see, in addition to me as a non-technical founder, is how are other non-technical people using my app. So I've got just a couple of minutes left, and hopefully I can just cover the final few points. But one of the things that we also learned is we were really scared as non-technical people to put our product out into the market. We thought it had to be perfect. We thought it had to be like, the compare with Facebook today before we could push it out into the market. Actually, I think we should have pushed it out a bit sooner. We should have pushed it out. People would have found, yes, they would have found bugs. They would have told us this work doesn't work, that doesn't work. But we could have failed more quickly and then fixed it. And, it would have been better that somebody else was telling me what they didn't like about the app rather than me just assuming I knew. So that was a big lesson. And I think this is whether you're a technical founder or not. Adjust and pivot as needed. As you guys have already seen, we are very, very different today than what we were when we first started. So we're definitely not a task sharing app anymore. That full-on community solution, which I'll leave you with, is very different, right? We started with a task sharing app, which and we decided to use a cross-hybrid solution. If you have any really super technical questions, I can answer those offline. I'm happy to do that. But we didn't even launch with a web version because we thought people just wanted to be on apps. Well, a lot of our users in the early days of our alpha and beta tests said to us, well, actually, we really want to be on the web as well. And now during the pandemic, it really helps that we have a web platform because everyone's on their computer. So it looks very, very different. But I'll leave you with one final thought. When I first started, I guess it's maybe potentially a little bit my personality as well, right? I'm a completely non-technical person. And sometimes people say to me, but Susan, you're so tech savvy. You know how to do this, you know how to do that. No, I know how to run my own platform, but there's a lot of tech things I don't know how to do. And I think at the end of the day, if you bring in the right talent around you, surround yourself with the people who know what they're doing, do your product market fit. So get the product out there in the early stages and understand if people actually are going to use it and how they would use it. Use that feedback and feed it back. A non-technical founder can build a thriving company. So today we are raising our final round of pre-seed funding. Just to give you a sense, we've raised £360,000 to date as non-technical founders. We're currently have another £350,000 committed. So we are well on our way as two non-technical founders to building a competitive SaaS platform in this space. And it's been a very exciting time. If any of my lessons can help you guys, I hope they do. But that's been my journey building Eugenie, and hopefully soon we'll be a household name in community management.
Thanks, Susan. That's brilliant. I think it's a great idea about the sharing the tasks and getting people more in a community, and great to see your success. So thanks for sharing that with us. So next up, we've got the lovely Erin. So Erin works in sales and marketing, and she's a recent graduate from Code Nation's bootcamp. And right from the start, she was absolutely outstanding, and she's got a great story. So she's here to share that today. So I'm going to hand over to you, Erin.
Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me? I hope so.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thanks for attending today's session. So my name is Erin. I'm 24, and my journey into tech has all started quite recently, and most ultimately with the support and guidance of Code Nation. I, like Thea said, recently completed the Master Code Bootcamp course, and through that learning, my eyes have been opened to the sheer amount of possibilities that do exist within the tech industry. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background, how I came to find the course, what I've learned, and how I do think it will help me in the future. So I personally come from a primarily academic background. I have a degree in French and German, and I'm studying for a part-time master's degree in international business. So whilst doing the master's, I have been working in sales and marketing, but because of the pandemic, I have been furloughed since June. So furlough for me, I think it was a little bit of a novelty that wore off quite quickly. I'm always busy and I love to be busy. So I think with this new abundance of free time, and there's so many ideas that existed within my head, I just didn't know where to direct all my energy. But then it was my mum who sent me the course, the advert for the course, which for people in Liverpool at the minute is fully funded by the Combined Authority. And I knew I'd just have to jump at the chance. So I spoke to my employer and I said, look, I think this course will be invaluable, not only for me, but also for the business going forward. And they agreed. And then 2 days later, I was learning about functions and arrays, and it was a really quick turnaround, but hands down the best thing that I have done this year. Coming from a marketing background, I have always had an interest in digital and things creative. So I really wanted to be able to understand code in a way that I could translate it to people that didn't have a clue, which I definitely did learn how to do. So during the first part of the course, we learned about JavaScript Fundamentals and how you kind of like build a web platform with HTML, CSS and JavaScript. And then we started to kind of quicken the pace a little bit, and we started to learn React.js, which is a JavaScript library that is designed by Facebook. I personally really love React as it's fast, and it allows developers to break down complex code into simpler components, which for me was just so much more logical than anything else that we'd used before. With React, I built a Spotify clone, but changed the interface a little bit. And then for our final projects, which we did in the last 2 weeks of the course, we kind of combined React and all the other backend technologies that we learned to use, and we built an e-commerce store. I definitely think that my favorite part of the course was the whole team atmosphere and collaborative aspect to learning how to code and being able to work in a team and translate all these complex ideas in a way that everyone understood. I think I definitely liked it more because I come from that background of learning languages, and it was quite similar. It was quite a similar learning process. Obviously, businesses have had to change their operations and work remotely, but Code Nation also adapted their curriculum to accommodate that too. And from the very beginning of the course, everyone on my cohort was actively participating, and because everyone was engaged, we all got to know each other quite well. And I mean, I finished the course nearly 2 weeks ago now, and we were saying how crazy it was that we've never met before. And I definitely would consider them as like really good friends now, and we do have plans to all meet each other once the restrictions are lifted. But yeah, that was a little bit about my coding journey, and I think in the next 5 years I really do have my sights set on completing a PhD. I'm really interested in how businesses are using different technologies and how it's changing the industries in which those businesses operate. I'm also currently working on writing bids to get funding for a project that was born through the lockdown, which is exciting. But yeah, I hope this little spiel has told you guys a little bit about how there's so many different avenues and paths that you can take to get into code, and it doesn't just have to be one area. There's so many different areas that you can go down.
Brilliant. Thanks, Erin. I hope you've inspired a few people to have a look at coding and see where that can take them. Thank you very much. So next we've got Anna Holland-Smith. Now, Anna is the Director of Engineering at Automatic. She entered the digital sector similar way to Erin, but is a little bit further along in her journey. So I thought it'd be great to hear that today. So I'll hand over to you, Anna.
Thank you. Hi everyone, my name's Anna. As Thea mentioned, I oversee engineering growth and development within Automatic. Automatic is the company behind products that you might be familiar with: WordPress.com, Tumblr, WooCommerce, and a whole bunch of other products. And we're a completely distributed organization, so we were remote before everyone was forced to be remote. So in terms of how we work, we've kind of been at the forefront of remote working since about 2007. So that creates a really interesting kind of engineering environment that I oversee and that I grow. But as Thea mentioned, my journey into tech started, I guess, through a rather unconventional route at the time. I graduated from university with a humanities degree. I went and did a law conversion, did my LPC, was working in criminal defense law, and was looking for something very different to kind of, you know, a new skill that I wanted to develop that was very different from my day-to-day. And so through this, I came to coding, and through an organization called Code First Girls, who provide free entry-level coding training for female students and recent graduates. I did an 8-week kind of part-time course, which was an introduction to HTML and CSS and a little bit of JavaScript. So enough to kind of create your first website and get your first website online. And I really, really loved it. And through that, I started to be exposed to opportunities within tech that just hadn't been on my radar at all through school, all through university. I had no idea that there were these types of opportunities that were available to me. And I thought, not having a computer science degree, that I sort of missed my opportunity to kind of step into the tech world. But around this time, so this was about 2016, the bootcamp model that Thea and Erin have mentioned was really emerging in London, as a way for people to both transition into technology careers, but also for people who were in the startup space to kind of go through an intensive course and become their own technical founder, or at least have the technical capabilities to work closely with their CTO or their technical founders. And I just couldn't get this the idea of this opportunity out of my mind. So eventually, after lots of consideration, so it wasn't like an impulsive jump, I decided that I would take some time away from law. I got a scholarship to a 12-week coding bootcamp, and I would just see where it took me. I completed the 12-week course, and a week after completing the course, was hired by the BBC as a back-end engineer. So one of the really interesting things about these kind of accelerated courses of learning is that, and Thea can probably speak to it a little bit more, is that it's not about teaching you the exact skill set or the exact technologies that you're going to be using in whichever direction you go as a founder, as a software engineer. It's about teaching you to be unafraid of leaning into new things and learning new skills. So the technology that they're teaching you, whether it's React or Java, is almost kind of unimportant. The skill set that they're teaching you is to learn quickly and to kind of accelerate your own growth throughout, you know, the early stages of your career in tech, but also from that point onwards. And so I did my coding bootcamp in Ruby. And when I went to go and do my pair programming interview for the BBC, I was told 2 days before that they didn't have any Ruby developers available to pair with me, and would I be okay to do it in JavaScript? So I went away and spent 2 days trying to learn JavaScript well enough to pass the coding interview. I passed the coding interview and was given an offer, and they were like, we've got an offer of you with a team, it's a back-end team, they use Java. So then I turned up for my first day of work and they were like, okay, right, we've been using Java, but we're now migrating over to Scala. So within, you know, sort of 4 months of learning to code, I'd been exposed to kind of 4 different languages, multiple different frameworks. And that's really kind of the skill set that you need as a software engineer. It's the ability to learn and learn quickly, and to embrace change, and to sort of, as Susan said, to be able to use the best technology for the job. And so during this first job that I had at the BBC, I was the first person that they'd hired who didn't have a computer science degree. And I was the only person on my team who didn't have a PhD in computer science. So even though I knew that I'd earned my right to be there and I'd come through exactly the same process that everybody else had come through, the imposter syndrome was huge. And the way in which I chose to kind of overcome that and start to validate myself was to begin to teach other people. So I went back to Code First Girls, the organisation that I'd learned to code with, and I started teaching other women how to code. And through that, I became involved with a number of different volunteering organisations. Code Your Future, which is a coding bootcamp for refugees and asylum seekers. Code 4000, which provides an offline coding bootcamp inside the prison system, so people that are incarcerated can begin to learn to code and to develop skills that will allow them to gain access to employment upon release. And through leaning into these interests was how I came to my kind of second job in the industry, which was I was approached by an e-commerce company who wanted to build out their own kind of internal pipeline for software engineers. So they wanted to be able to take graduates of any degree discipline and over the course of 6 months, upskill them so that they could perform the same responsibilities as a software engineer in their organization. So this was everything from, you know, the content, the educational content that we did to deliver to them, the support and the infrastructure that needed to be in place. And so that was, you know, my second job in the industry. And then, yeah, my third job takes me to where I am now, which is again leaning into the intersection of technology and people, which is something that I'm really interested in. When you're scaling an engineering organization, it's often a combination of both people and technology that you're dealing with. So you're having to kind of work at that very intersection, which a lot of people that have come from a more traditional technology background don't necessarily have the skill set to be able to navigate. And so, yeah, it's really interesting work. And both the two subsequent jobs that I had after the BBC were jobs that were either created for me or that I didn't know existed, you know, when I came into the industry. And I think that's what's really powerful about the technology space at the moment, whether or not you're building your own products or working for other people. You're always going to, you know, be confronted with opportunities that you just hadn't anticipated could exist. And so it's definitely not a space where you can expect just a very linear career trajectory. I mean, there are people that go in and they have that journey, but there's also the opportunity for, you know, lots of interesting lateral moves and opportunities that you just couldn't have imagined. So I feel like I'm rambling a little bit now about my career, but hopefully that's given us a very brief kind of top level view of my journey from law to kind of head of engineering. And yes, I'll happily answer any kind of more detailed questions offline or after in the Q&A.
Thanks, Anna, that was brilliant. And I think you've touched on a really important point there, that actually it's the self-belief, isn't it, and the courage to go and learn a new skill. So brilliant, thank you very much. So last but not least, we've got Amity. So Amity is the co-founder of a software engineering consultancy called Amity. And she hasn't had the traditional route into tech, so she's going to talk to you a little bit about that today.
Hi everyone, thanks Thea. Thanks for all the panelists before me. They were great stories. Mine's a little bit different, as Thea said, so I'll try and be quick because I'm very conscious that some of you might want to go off and get some lunch before your next Zoom meeting. So growing up, I actually wanted to be Beyonce, but you know, Beyonce was already there, so I couldn't. So that was a shame. And then I did my degree in business and economics, and then I went a teacher. My sister was a teacher, and my sister really inspires me. So I became a teacher, and I taught economics and business for about 8 years, and I really enjoyed it. It took me I lived in Mexico for a few years, lived all over the UK. And I really enjoyed it. But then one day I woke up and I was like, nah, actually, I really don't want to be a teacher anymore. I loved teaching, I loved my colleagues and stuff. It just wasn't for me. So I just quit my job one day. I did loads of jobs after that, and it was really hard. I can't lie. There's lots of times where I thought I'm going to go back to teaching, and I got rejected a lot. I got rejected loads, and then I started getting a few jobs, but they weren't the normal jobs that I was looking for. So I became a waitress, I became a data analyst, I became a painter, I did delivery driving. I did, like, you name it, I'll do it. And I did it to the best of my ability. And then out of nowhere, I fell into technology. And I started as a junior business analyst. I got rejected from that as well, to be really clear. I got rejected a lot. And I think that's really, really important when you're accessing a new sector, be it tech, be it anything. Of course, you're going to get rejected a little bit because your CV is not of those CVs that are flying through the door. So my CV, although I had quite a good and successful teaching career, they'd look at it and they'd be like, teacher, nah, we don't want to. So someone took a chance on me, and I think that was a numbers game because I just kept applying. Anyway, got into technology and was just lucky enough to work under such an amazing manager at the time. He was the head of technology. He's called Mark, and he was just such an amazing leader. And so I was able to just grow very quickly. I was the first hire in. So he was like, I'm going to need you to engineer a little bit. So I was like, oh, better learn coding. He's like, I'm going to need you to do delivery management. Better learn that. And everything he threw at me, I was just like, better learn it. And when I couldn't learn it, or I just didn't know what I was doing, I'd just say it. And I think that's another definitely tip for people. Don't be afraid to say you don't know, because people are actually quite kind, especially when they're not behind a keyboard trolling you. They're really kind and they will help you. So they might, if you say, like, one of the things I didn't know, like, for example, in my first interview, it was like, can you whiteboard me something? And having been a teacher, I stood up really confidently. I was like, got my whiteboard pens and I looked at the board and I thought, what should I start teaching economics? I don't know what I'm doing. So I just was honest. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I thought I might get rejected. But anyway, I carried that on through my career. So just saying when I don't know the answer to something, people will help you. I then left Sky, joined a really good consultancy, again, fell under some really good leadership, really inspiring woman, was one of the directors called Lara. She was great, really inspired me a lot. She's a great leader. And I was able to then grow as well. I worked in lots of different clients, international and national. It moved me to London, despite my accent. I'm actually living in London. And I then met two great men who are now my business partners, but I met them about a year and a half before I actually opened my consultancy. And they're just wonderful, experienced, pragmatic men. And when I actually approached them to say, I don't know what I'm doing with my career or my life, sat in a coffee shop round the corner from work and like cried to one of them. And this is just in the capacity of, because they run a successful recruitment firm. I was like, I don't know what to do. Then they started talking to me about, well, what is it that I want to do? And I said, I want to own something. I said, I've had such a funny journey, and throughout it all, it's been quite a negative journey. People see it and they think, oh, Amandeep's achieved this, or no, Amandeep went through a ton of rejection first. And it's really important to just it's okay to be rejected. And actually, I'm not going to say it makes you more resilient. It makes you more, it hurts. Like, it's awful. And you question yourself and you question your journey, because you think to yourself, actually, can I do it? And coming from my kind of cultural background, I, apart from my sister, don't really have a cheerleader. My mum never quite understood I don't think she understands what I do now. My dad doesn't have a massive interest. He's a cheerleader, but he's not really concerned about what I do. I guess maybe if I was my brother, he would, but touching a different subject there. So then I lost my train of thought. So he asked me what I wanted to do. I told them what I wanted to do. And they said, we've been thinking about wanting to open a consultancy. We'd love you to co-found it with us and be the face of it, essentially, and run it how you want to. Establish and manifest a culture that you think is appropriate with our guidance. I didn't really think too much of it at the time because I didn't think it was a reality. Didn't think I had the skill set. Still questioned a little bit about whether I could do it. Ended up in Thailand at the just pre-pandemic, super pre-pandemic, with one of the founders. I actually just went on his holiday. It was quite bad, actually. He didn't invite me. I just turned up and really like got stuck into it and the ins and outs of it. I came back from Thailand and I quit my job and we opened the consultancy and we started operating last year on the 1st of April, like true fools, and just kind of like looked at each other thinking, what we're doing. It's been really hard. It's been really tough. And I think one of the biggest things, especially in the pandemic, which is just a little thing I want to say about the pandemic, is I left a really wonderful company with wonderful people around me, hundreds of wonderful people around me. And I then just went into a pandemic. I was completely isolated. I was actually living in an Airbnb because I was in between places. And I was now not exposed to my business partners. And it was some of the worst months of my life. And I, again, in that moment, didn't think about going to a permanent tech job. What came back to me was like what I know, which is, shall I go get a teaching job? At least that will put me around a team. So, well, we've carried on. It's been really hard. We've had some great success because we've had a few clients, and I'm currently working with a great client as well. And it's only going to get better. But I think some of my key takeaways that I want people to take away is it's not easy. Changing your career is not easy. Taking a break to be a parent, whether you're a man or a woman, coming back to work is not easy. And the world only moves at such a fast pace that you blink, or you take 6 months out to maybe raise a child or go on a sabbatical, you come back, the whole world's changed. So when you're getting rejected, don't think it's you. There's hundreds of people applying for roles that you're applying for. Be relentless, be completely relentless. And one of the things that I find, and there's lots of statistics to back this, that women won't apply for a job if they don't tick all the essentials. Apply for the job. Like, who cares? Just apply for, if you want to go for that job, learn what the job's about, figure out what makes you different and apply for it. And another thing that I really want people to take away is look for a mentor. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's somebody who's a CEO of a company. It could just be that other man or woman that you think has done well. They might only be a page ahead of you in the textbook, but they inspire you. Reach out to them, whether it's on LinkedIn or a social media platform, and just say to them, hey, can you guide me a little bit? This is what I want to do. And it's not all roses, and it's not all fun. I think my business partners have heard me cry more than anyone in my life, and I'm divorced, and I think they've heard me cry more than that. So I just want you to, like, really just, anyone who's listening to it, be it a man or a woman, it's really hard, but keep going. And I'm always available, and I always take on mentees. So please reach out to me. If I've got space in my diary, I will. But that's all for me. Sorry, I've rambled on a little bit. I tried to go really fast. But I'm open to questions, whether it's through here or you want to DM me on LinkedIn. But yeah, have a nice day.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Amadeep. So I think my takeaways there are self-belief, resilience, and if you want to go on holiday, just turn up on someone else's.
Exactly.
So we are running out of time, but I think if we've got maybe time for one question, and what we'll do is we'll pick up with people afterwards, and if there's anything that you want answered, we can speak to the speakers and get that answered for you.
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions coming through. There's one around someone who's asked that they work in technology and have 3 young girls that they want to inspire to get into tech. What advice would you give to encourage them? That's whoever wants to answer that. I'm sure we could speak for another hour on that, but if there's any advice.
I don't mind.
Go on.
No, please go on. Please go on, Erin.
Okay. I'd say coming from someone who's quite new and quite young compared to everyone else's journey on here, I'd say just really try and make it fun. For me, anything that I've learned in the past, if it's not fun, then I don't want to do it, or I will just lose interest. So coding, it's very, very practical. You can build things, you can show them what can be done with it. So I think coming from that aspect is probably a really good encouragement. Anyone else?
I think starting with baby steps. I mean, there's a lot of there's a contact of mine who runs a coding school for kids, and I think they try to gamify it. So kind of going along what Erin was saying is make it fun, make it a game, but start small as well, because I think it can be daunting as well. But yeah, I think if they can make it fun, start with like one class or one experience. But maybe also introducing them to people who are girls who do code, right? Letting them watch them talk like, not like this maybe, but and showing them that girls can do it. I see a lot of fear amongst women actually more than men in terms of embracing when they're not in tech and non-coders and being like, well, I can't do that. Even our end users, a lot of them are like, oh, I don't know how to set the system up, so I'm going to stick to something I know. It's that fear that holds them back.
We'll have time for one more quick question. So we've obviously, various people have spoken about having inspirational leaders and kind of people who inspire you to get into your careers. How can we sort of develop, how can we develop these people really? I think that's the question. To have more inspirational female leads in tech.
I think that's again another topic that we could probably spend an hour on, but I think the idea that we've touched upon here, which is that inspiration and role models can almost come from anywhere. We don't need these to be kind of people that are CTOs or at an executive level. Anybody who is just a step ahead of someone on the journey has the potential to be a role model and a mentor. And so that's where your networks become really powerful, and that's something that I would encourage anyone to do that's kind of considering stepping into a new space, or particularly in the tech world, kind of just building your networks, meeting new people, building connections, and through that you'll find inspiring women, men, everywhere you look, and you might even become that person for somebody else.
Yeah, share the wins, right? Share your wins with other people. When I first started, I was like, do people really want to hear about my journey? I was using my own Facebook account to share with my network that, we've launched Eugenie and this is what we're doing. And I'm like, I felt almost like imposter syndrome, being like, why should I be who people are listening to? But along the way, I've gotten messages from people one-to-one saying, thank you for sharing that, because it's now made me think about, starting my own business or doing something I was a bit afraid about. So, and I'm not saying like, keeping ego in check, but sharing our wins if we can, because you just never know who within your network you're inspiring.
Great. Well, thank you so much to our speakers. They're all very inspiring talks today, and thank you to everyone who's attended. We, as I say, if you'd like to join our LinkedIn group where we'll post about our future events and any kind of relevant discussions, then please add me on LinkedIn and I'll add you to the group. So hopefully we'll see where the next event is by the time we get to the summer. But thanks again. You will get a feedback email, so be grateful for your feedback today on the event and any future events. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.